The pen hovered over the contract, worth millions. "Don't sign this," she whispered, her hand trembling as it touched his sleeve. In that moment, everything changed, not just for them, but for hundreds of families who would never know how close they came to disaster. My name is Emma Chen, and I was just a waitress at Bellini's when I saved a billionaire from the biggest mistake of his life. But what I never expected was that he would save me too. "Order up for table 12. I grabbed the plates, balancing them expertly as I navigated the Friday night crowd at Bellini's. My feet ached in cheap shoes, and my tips so far wouldn't cover next week's rent. But I kept smiling. That's what waitresses do. Table 12 was in our private dining section. A business dinner. Men in suits worth more than my yearly salary, laughing too loudly, drinking bourbon that cost more per glass than I made in an hour. At the head of the table sat Jackson Reed, tech billionaire, philanthropist, and according to Forbes, one of America's most eligible bachelors. I'd seen his face on magazines but never expected to serve him pasta. "Anything else I can get for you gentlemen?" I asked, setting down their entrees. That's when I noticed the papers. Legal documents spread across the table, with post-it notes marking signature lines. The man beside Jackson, sharp eyes, sharper suit, was talking fast, pushing a fountain pen toward him. "Just sign here, Jack. By Monday, Westside will be demolished and construction begins. 18 months to completion. The profit margins are insane. Westside. My neighborhood. My home. The struggling community center where I volunteered teaching ESL classes to immigrants. The elderly housing complex where my grandmother lived." I froze, nearly dropping the last plate. "Excuse me," Jackson said, looking up at me with startling blue eyes. "Could we get another bottle of the Barolo?" I nodded mechanically, but my mind was racing. As I turned to leave, I glimpsed the development plans: luxury condos, high-end retail. No affordable housing. No community spaces. When I returned with the wine, they were laughing about something. The sharp-eyed man, Marcus, I heard them call him, was tapping the contract impatiently. "Let's wrap this up. The sooner you sign, the sooner we break ground." Jackson reached for the pen. Without thinking, I leaned down as I poured his wine and whispered, "Don't sign this." His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" The table went silent. I'd crossed a line. I'd probably just lost my job. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just, that's Westside. There are families there. Good people." Marcus glared at me. "Miss, this is a private business matter." Jackson studied my face. "What's your name?" "Emma." "Well, Emma, why don't you tell me more about Westside while I sign these papers?" My heart sank. He was just humoring me. But what happened next changed everything. Jackson didn't sign. Instead, he stood up, straightened his tie, and said something that left the entire table speechless. "Gentlemen, I'm putting this deal on hold. Emma here has raised some concerns I'd like to investigate." Marcus was furious. "You can't be serious. Because of a waitress?" "Because I make informed decisions," Jackson replied coolly. "We'll reconvene next week." As the businessmen filed out, Jackson stayed behind. "I'd like to hear more," he said. "When do you finish your shift?" 2 hours later, we sat in a 24-hour diner, me still in my waitress uniform, him loosening his tie as I told him everything about Westside, the families, the community garden, the small businesses struggling to survive. "Why did you risk your job to stop me?" he asked. "Because some things matter more than a paycheck," I answered. "Those people are my family." Something shifted in his eyes. "I know about making hard choices. My company started in my parents' garage after we lost everything in the 2008 crash. I promised myself I'd never forget where I came from." "But you almost did," I said softly. He nodded. Almost. What I didn't know then was that Jackson had his own reasons for reconsidering. His mother had grown up in a neighborhood just like Westside before it was demolished for luxury development. She'd never recovered from being uprooted. The next day, Jackson showed up at the community center. In jeans and a t-shirt, nobody recognized the billionaire as he listened to resident stories, played basketball with the kids, and ate homemade tamales with Mrs. Gonzalez. By evening, he was sitting on my grandmother's worn couch, drinking tea as she showed him old photographs. "You remind me of my late husband," she told him. He could see the value in things others overlooked. I watched something change in Jackson that day, something profound and irreversible. 3 months later, Jackson unveiled a new development plan for Westside. Not demolition, but revitalization. Affordable housing alongside market-rate units. Small business incubators. A state-of-the-art community center. Marcus quit in protest. The board was skeptical until Jackson showed them the numbers, how sustainable, community-focused development could actually yield better long-term returns. "This isn't charity," he told them. "It's smart business." What the board didn't see was Jackson and me, working late into the night, creating a model that could be replicated in struggling neighborhoods across the country. What they didn't see was how we fell in love, not in grand gestures, but in shared purpose. In the way he listened when I spoke. In the way I challenged him to remember his values. On the day of the groundbreaking, Jackson handed me a small box. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a key. "It's to the new community center," he explained. "I've established a foundation to run it. I want you to be the director." I stared at him. "But I'm just a waitress." "No," he said, taking my hands. "You're the woman who reminded me that success isn't measured by wealth, but by impact. The woman I want by my side as we build something that matters." That's when he got down on one knee, right there in the dirt of the construction site. "Emma Chen, will you marry me? Not because I'm a billionaire or you're a waitress, those are just jobs. But because together, we're better people than we are apart." I said yes through tears, as the community we'd saved cheered around us. Today, 5 years later, the Westside model has been implemented in 30 cities. Jackson and I lead the foundation together, and our 2-year-old daughter toddles through community gardens that once faced demolition. Sometimes I think about that night at Bellini's, how close it all came to never happening. How 2 simple words, "Don't sign," changed everything. So if you're watching this and wondering if one person can make a difference, remember my story. Sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest ripples. Sometimes courage is just a whisper when it would be easier to stay silent. If you found inspiration in our journey, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of everyday heroes making extraordinary change. And I'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Maybe the next Westside model will happen in your community. Because in the end, it's not about waitresses and billionaires. It's about remembering that behind every contract, every business deal, every signature, there are real people whose lives hang in the balance. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply speak up.